Peace, and welcome to Manisisters TV. My name is Adrienne, and today we're going to talk about emotional clarity. So, if you happen to study human design and you just so happen to be emotional authority, you've heard about waiting for emotional clarity. And there's been a lot of conversation going around about what is emotional clarity and what does it feel like. And I wanted to come on and kind of maybe inject a little bit more into the conversation, particularly from a scientific standpoint and also from an experiential standpoint. Now, before I go on, I am going to admit that I am not emotionally defined, nor do I have, of course, emotional authority. So what I'm saying, you can, take it or leave it. But I think we should just get into it. So first of all, what we hear about emotional clarity is that for people with emotional authority, that you are supposed to wait for emotional clarity. I've heard emotional clarity be described as when there's no longer the emotional charge to the prospect of doing whatever you're going to do, or that there is a calmness or a peacefulness, especially in terms of manifestors, that there's a peacefulness that arrives and it's just something that then your body is free to do. And though I agree with that in a lot of ways, I think that we probably need to bring a little bit more reality into the conversation about what emotional clarity might feel like. So I think in the conversation, a lot of people expect emotional clarity to feel like perfect peace, as in there's no more emotional charge. Well, one of the things that's always constantly happening if you have a body and you're alive is that emotions are occurring. I love the definition of emotions as an event in the body that's biochemical. And the thing about it is we're never free of that. We're always experiencing our biochemistry. Therefore, we are always, all of us, whether we are emotionally defined or not, experiencing emotions. Okay. An emotion. So there's a difference between emotions and feelings. And I do like to make that distinction. Like a feeling is like a sensation. So, being cold or being hot or being hungry or having to go to the bathroom. That's a feeling. And then an emotion is actually kind of like a combination of a physical state and a thought story that goes along with it. You may or may not, go with that definition, but I'm getting that definition from imagotherapy. So this is something that has been used by therapists for a long time as a model of a way to think about emotions. So again, an event in the body, it's got biochemistry. There's an awareness continuum to your emotions, meaning that at some point in time, you become aware of your emotions, but many of the emotions that you may be experiencing could be outside of your awareness. And that's going to be really important to what comes up later. Number 4, you can report on your emotions, meaning that you can describe what you're feeling or what you're experiencing. But here's a little thing. Many of us actually misrepresent or misreport our emotions. And there's that could be a whole nother video. Also, emotions typically have a social value, meaning that either they're acceptable or unacceptable. For instance, anger is pretty unacceptable. Grief is actually unacceptable, especially in men. And joy and happiness is, in reality, a very unacceptable emotion. It's one of those things where people want to tone it down. So in this video, I'm going to focus on one emotion in particular, which stands in the way of emotional clarity, but I'll be revealing that towards the end. So first of all, things that stand in a way of us gaining emotional clarity. First of all, the transits. Like, no one's going to turn the sky off. There's always going to be conditioning coming through us, through neutrinos, just through the air. The sky is on fire. There's this astronomical event occurring. There's this astrological conjunction occurring. And all of these things have impact on us. These are not self. And the thing about not self is not self and conditioning don't stop just because we are working on our deconditioning process. The deconditioning process is something that is a lifelong endeavor. I think I'm giving away the secret. It's not something that ever stops. So one of the ways in which we can combat that, right? So how are we combating that? Because when I think about human design is in itself a body-based system, but the way we approach it and connect with it, first off, is very mental and intellectual. So the first thing that we do is raise awareness. So what I would suggest is there's so many ways right now that you can track the transits. If you are feeling one way in one moment and start to feel a different way in another moment, sometimes you can just track the transits. Now, some people say, oh, well, no, you just accept all of the feelings. The feelings, they come and they go. Yeah, I get that. And that's true. The feelings, they come and the feelings, they go. But let me tell you, emotions don't just come out of the solar plexus. So even for people who aren't solar plexus defined, you know, the transits hitting on any of those other centers, if you're open there, if it hits in a gate that you're open in, or if it creates, you know, a connection, you're potentially going to feel that, especially if you are not aware. And I find that for myself, tracking the transits and keeping track of the transits has been fantastic for me, so that when, you know, I feel different, right? When my emotional state is different, that I can still continue on being respectful of the fact that there's just something happening in the sky and that I could be feeling that. And that awareness kind of allows me to become separated from it. And it allows me to put distance between me and, you know, what's coming out of the cosmic weather. All right. So number two, something that kind of, you know, can interrupt or get in the way of emotional clarity is the people that you're around. So the fact is, we've got the transits happening, but you also have the people around you experiencing their own life trips. And every person has an aura, and everyone's aura is communicating constantly. So if you are not, you know, not the lucky person who can live alone on a mountaintop somewhere by yourself, you are being conditioned by other people. If those other people are, you know, also deconditioning and very aware, the ride might be a little easier. But if you're living with people who maybe aren't into human design or aren't into self-development or not particularly aware, you can be picking up things from other people. So I want to say that emotional clarity can oftentimes be interrupted simply by who you're around. And this is like not just emotional clarity, but just clarity in general, because I think clarity is for everyone. So my favorite, and I told you I would get to this one, is an emotion. And this is the emotion of fear. So the emotion of fear is really interesting because there's a particular biochemistry to fear. Fear is epinephrine and adrenaline. These are typically triggered before we can think. So they're a body-based biochemistry that can flood your system. A few interesting things about fear is fear can like last forever. Because our bodies are over-engineered, our adrenal glands are able to continuously pump out these chemicals into our bloodstream nonstop. This is where, adrenal burnout comes from, where basically your adrenal glands are producing so much of these chemicals and flooding your body with it. We know that epinephrine and adrenaline will impact your memory, stop digestion, stop playful activities, stop, sexual drive. All of these things kind of stop when this fear is on board. It takes typically 20 to 30 minutes for these chemicals to clear. So if you were out and you're being chased by a lion, right, then you would get these chemicals in your body. But once you were in a safe place, those chemicals would go away within about 30 minutes. And then you would stop being hypervigilant and, all of these things that occur when those chemicals flood your body. But we live in a society where fear is actually, not only is it socially acceptable, it's kind of exploited. We have entire places dedicated to scaring us. Think about scary movies and amusement parks, not to mention the news media. So you can actually be getting a lot of fear response, and you're not being chased by a lion and you're not in danger. So all of this kind of ramping up of fear makes us more resilient and resistant to the fear chemicals. And actually, there's an addiction cycle that occurs. Right. So we can be addicted to fear. The thing about fear is it feels terrible. It's not one of the emotions that feels really awesome. Interestingly enough, there's, and perhaps I'll do another video about this, about the 4 basic emotions. But 2 of the other emotions, I would say they can feel amazing, but they also kind of feel like losing control. But anger feels amazing. Real, actual anger, not fear dressed up as anger, and not sadness dressed up as anger, but real anger feels great. But fear in itself feels terrible. It makes your body feel awful. And it's, there to help you avoid death and pain. But we're typically, all of us, walking around with a cocktail of fear in our biochemistry, partially because it's just something that is been societally programmed within us. Not to mention it could be a part of a transit, or we could be, getting fear from someone else, a person that's in our immediate surroundings, somebody who sees us doing what we're doing and becomes fearful, and now we're taking on that fear. So fear is one of those things that if you aren't being chased by a lion, and if you're not in immediate real life danger, is typically an illusion. And it's an illusion made in the mind. So just being aware, first of all, is one great way to dismantle fear. But you really have to start to become aware of where the fear is coming from. So it's not about the story about where the fear is coming from, but understanding that fear is, sometimes it's about unmet needs and unexpressed emotions. But typically, and I have a quote from H.P. Lovecraft, which is, the oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear. And the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. So in terms of emotional clarity and clarity over time, especially for you guys with the solar plexus, oftentimes fear is blocking you from clarity. And it's fear of the unknown. So what I invite any of you to do is, when you are, maybe you're contemplating a big move, a thing to do, the way that you can, approach your clarity is by, sampling that thing. I call it dating your ideas, dating the concept, dating the thing. So if you think about dating, and actually my dating coach and I kind of came up with a term together. We call it data-ing. Dating is just all about, having a good time. It should be having a good time and gathering data about the other person to find out if it's something that you want to commit to. A lot of us, of course, we don't even know how to date. And I hate to say this, but we go in with all these great expectations when in fact you date for growth, not for a particular outcome. So if you go in thinking that you want to get married to your date or to your idea, a lot of times that puts a lot of undue pressure. And when you're under pressure, fear can come up because it's all of this fear of, oh my God, what's next? If you can actually bring your consciousness into the present, which is something that they don't ever say to solar plexus people. They're like, oh, just wait, let it, take the time. Yes, take the time, but just be present and don't necessarily think about an outcome. The outcome is not that important. All you're doing is fact finding. All you're doing is data gathering. All you're doing perhaps is even doing a little proof of concept. You're not putting all of your energy in. And, and maybe this is because I'm a 1-3. I don't feel like I waste my time by putting a little energy towards something to gather data. You're just gathering data. You're just gathering data. You're not looking at a particular outcome. So the thing about fear is the more of the map you reveal, the more that you know, the less fear can live. So it's like the first time you rode a bicycle, right? At first you were really afraid. And then over time, as you practiced and did it a little more and became more familiar, then the nervousness went away. So understanding that sometimes a little bit of fear will be there, but the fear will be cleared up through your activity. I saw a friend of mine and she said, this is clarity through action. It's possible for you to act and begin to clear up the fear, especially if the fear is kind of a residual fear. And also, again, back to the expectation of what emotional clarity feels like. Because there are so many variables, emotional clarity isn't the truth. It's a relatively good approximation of the truth. It's not the whole truth. It can never be the whole truth. And that's fine. So then you proceed with maybe 80% of the truth and then allow the other 20% to reveal itself. Because again, what fun would life be if there weren't some surprises anyway? So anyway, I think I'm all done here. And if you'd like to, please comment below. I'm absolutely aware that this is not something that is taught in canon. So I welcome all responses. Let me know what your process is and how that process can be helpful to other people. I can tell you that in my coaching practice, we do some unblocking techniques that are really good at getting people to release their stories and to also help to manage the fear. Sometimes managing the fear is about changing your body posture. Sometimes managing the fear is about going for a walk and getting rid of energy you've picked up out in the world. And sometimes it's just having awareness of what the transits are and understanding that you may have this feeling, and this feeling might not even have anything to do with your actual emotional wave. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me. Please comment below and click subscribe and the bell so that you can get all notifications when a new video comes up. Peace.